Hi friends, welcome back to Al's Play World. Today I want to talk about Heroes of the Storm in the sense that I've been playing this game since the alpha, and I feel like I have enough time now to do a proper review and analysis of where the game is standing right now as of the current patch. I know there's some changes incoming, and of course it's gone through a lot of changes since the alpha, but first let's go through an overview. I do honestly believe it's one of the best MOBAs that I've played out there because the gameplay feels very fluid. Combat feels really organic, particularly objectives on every different map feel really dialed in for the most part. I know sometimes when the new maps came out, for example, when the Sky Temple first came out, it felt like it was a little bit wonky, and Blizzard was really good about dialing in the damage from the temples. I think they still need to tweak it a little bit, but of course they have a lot more internal metrics than I do, so I'm sure they know where it's a good spot. Compared to other MOBAs, and I think that's one of the problems, because a lot of the times I hear a discussion going on, is this game better than League of Legends? Is it better than Dota 2? And I think the problem is that it's not to be compared with those other two games. It's a very different game. We've sort of fallen into this arena where a MOBA gets seen as this thing that started with Dota, and then League of Legends added its own little bit of flavor, and that's sort of what we go for here. And I think Heroes of the Storm falls in this category is a little bit different. The lack of last hitting mechanics, the lack of gold, and the lack of building the abilities the way that you would in a traditional MOBA, I think are actually a really positive change. However, I do see how that conflicts with certain other players' mentality of what a MOBA is. In fact, one of the most constant concerns that I see on this game when I'm playing is you run into an experienced League of Legends player, an experienced Dota 2 player, and oftentimes they get really aggravated with the game in the sense that you hear them complain about their teammates, you'll hear them complain about how casual the game is, but very often those same players are the ones that cost you a win because they remain in lane a little too long, they do not roam, which is something you're supposed to do in this game. Normally leaving a lane and not getting that gold is going to set you really far behind. But in this game, particularly in certain maps like Blackheart's Bay, the Tomb of the Dragon Queen, you get rewarded for roaming even before level 10 because you can get a pick on the kill, you can fight for objectives, and they are actually so much more important than just sitting there and last hitting to get gold and get a build. So I think it's the first point that I would like to make, and that big concern is that we should look at this game completely different than the rest of the MOBAs. I don't think they should be compared. I don't think you can compare League of Legends or Dota 2 to Heroes of the Storm because of the fact that they're very different games. One of the things that I think is really good about this particular game is that it really does appeal to newcomers a lot better. There's a certain, it's not a skill wall. People usually talk about skill. It's a lot harder to fight and look at the map and then to be last hitting at the same time, and that is, I think, correct. There's a certain level of difficulty, but I think of the time investment it takes to learn that skill for a new player makes it almost not worth it because you're not having that much fun learning the game. You're having a lot of difficulty learning the fundamentals to be able to compete, particularly if you start playing, with people who know what they're doing, and then you sort of see the negativity that often happens and why people think the MOBAs are so toxic. In my opinion, it's usually just because you have people who have been playing the game for years and they know everything inside out and they're really good at the fundamental mechanics you need to know. And then when a new player comes, it's frustrating to see that because you want them to be up to par because you're supposed to be worrying about the actual gameplay, about getting kills, about basically moving the objective forward. So I think this game, even though it is a lot more accessible, and that's what a lot of you guys are going to say, it's casual, I think in my mind that's a really positive thing because I've seen a lot of people who would have never played a MOBA join this game, have a little bit of fun learning, and actually become really, really good. As far as combat goes, I believe this game is fairly balanced. I think there's been a couple times where there's been a really underpowered hero. I think there's still some really underpowered heroes out there that they haven't looked at. There's some heroes that don't have a lot of build diversity, but it's a really young game, so I expect them to get that nailed down. I'm really happy where the balance is at the moment as far as heroes and objectives. I think it's in a really good spot. And I think the most important thing is that the gameplay, to me, is a lot of fun. It's just the focus on team brawling and on objective fighting, which I think if you saw my other videos on my channel, I did play Infinite Crisis for a while there. They sort of tried to do that with the timing on objectives, but it did feel a little forced. Basically, in that game, it tried to be too much like a standard MOBA in the sense that you were laning and then at that particular time you just rush in to have a team fight an objective. I really do think that in Heroes of the Storm, whenever the tribute spawns or the temple spawns or you have to go fight for the shrines or whatever the case may be, it does feel like an organic move in which you're fighting. There's a lot of really good opportunities to get team cycling. In the case of you go back for mana, someone else jumps in your lane, you go in a different lane. There's a lot of mobility, and I think that makes the game a lot of fun. It feels organic. I don't think I've ever felt a forced battle. There's never been a moment where I felt like, oh, well, we were doing this other thing, but we're going to stop doing that, and then we're going to rush over there. Even in a map like Cursed Hollow, where the tree will spawn, and then you got to drop what you're doing, it does feel like you have an option there as far as strategy and tactics, and I think that makes it a lot of fun. Let's go ahead and talk now about matchmaking, and I think, particularly in Quick Match, I think everybody knows, if you've been frequenting the forums or Reddit, that something needs refining. I'm not going to say I necessarily have the answer, because I don't have access to Blizzard's internal numbers, so I'm not going to speak out of school and pretend to tell you how to fix it, but I think most of the community is aware that there needs to be something that happens to make matchmaking a little bit more reliable. In particularly, two big things that happen a lot in Quick Match is the level difference between players, which some of you might say, well, it doesn't really matter because it's based on your hidden matchmaking rating, but oftentimes that also comes to an incredible amount of inexperience. So you'll play a Quick Match game in which somebody is not familiar with the map, is not familiar with the objectives, and basically they are just lagging behind the entire time. They're making questionable decisions, and you get rolled. And I keep finding more and more of these one-sided games, whether it's my team going, 32 kills to 1, or it's their team going 32 kills to 1. Because when you get matched with players who are really inexperienced, it sort of becomes this divide, and then you assume that everybody's at your level because of the fact that you're just, that's the way you play. So you basically, if you're a good player, you're reacting in time, and then you see your teammates lag behind, and there's this weird lack of communication that happens when that particular issue happens, because you don't really want to be toxic, you don't want to be yelling at people to do what you want to do, but at the same time, you sort of expect them to because you do it. So I think their matchmaking, particularly in Quick Match, needs to be fixed. The other big problem there is the wonky team compositions. Oftentimes, this doesn't happen nearly as often anymore, but I've had games where we'll have 4 tanks and 1 healer versus like basically a balanced team. And I don't think it's a bad thing to have wonky team comps. I don't think we should try to force a meta in which Quick Match is always a warrior, a healer, and then 3 of either specialist assassins or another warrior. I think but you need to be careful with the way you do things, oftentimes it can be really frustrating for a player who's trying to get into the game to get a composition that feels unworkable. And oftentimes, I think it's also a player's lack of knowledge of the current meta game, because I've had a couple games where somebody will have 2 warriors and be like, well, we don't have any damage, good game, GG. And it's not really true. You can definitely pull wins. You can definitely, if you focus on the objectives, play a little bit different, you can definitely do it. So that's why I say I'm not going to speak out of school. I don't know how to fix matchmaking, but I just do know it needs a little bit of refining. Again, the game is very, very new, and it's come a long way from the way matchmaking used to behave a couple patches ago. So I think we're in a good spot there. Moving on to the next topic, Hero League. I have a really big bone to pick here with Hero League for a couple reasons, but I'll go into that further on when I talk about the ranks. But for the first thing I want to note about Hero League is that premates are extremely easy to rank up with. I actually have 2 accounts because I want to play with some players, some of my friends in the European servers. And in that account, I actually play just premates. We don't play team league because we don't have 5 players, but it's 3 of us, and we play. We try to queue up together, and I believe it was within 100 games we reached rank 1. Very, very fast. I never felt really challenged with that setup, because oftentimes is basically you're limiting the amount of randoms that you get with just 2 players. We had voice comms, and you can definitely make an impact on the game. And oftentimes it felt like the enemy team, there's some close games that oftentimes it feels like the enemy team had 1 or 2 players who were just slightly bad. And I don't mean that in the sense of like, trying to sound elitist, or just players that were not in the same ranking that they should have been. And that leads me to my next point, which is there's an apparent discrepancy between your matchmaking rating, your MMR, and your actual rank, because it feels like there's again, we don't have the formula, so this is pure speculation for what we've been talking about in the forums and on Reddit. But it seems like what Blizzard's going for here is for an average MMR, so that if you have all your players, you add up their matchmaking ratings and you divide them by 5, your team is going to have an MMR of blank, and they're going to match you with another team that does similar. The problem with that is that if you have a team that has a lot of MMRs that are close to each other, they can have the same MMR as a team that has 1 really good player, 1 intermediate player, and 3 really bad players. That's definitely possible. So because of the fact that this is a team-oriented game, and that you can't really carry in the sense of like you can't have 1 player who can 1v3 people and just put the team on his back and single-handedly make a difference, it gets a little frustrating. And in particular, now we'll go to my North American account, which I've been playing Hero League, and I got all the way down to rank 9 and felt really organic. You lose a couple games, you win a bunch. And then something happened where I kept getting ranked with people who were way behind in ranking. So, I would have been ranked 10, and let's say my teammates would have been ranked 20, and then 48, and 30 plus, And then it definitely felt like that lack of experience that I was talking about before definitely impacted that. And I started getting a little bit of a losing streak, and I was like, this is not a big deal, Go all the way up to rank 15, and I was like, okay, that's probably the game telling me it's correcting itself. And then it sort of felt in this weird pattern where I would win a game and get around 80 points, and it would have been either sometimes you win a really, really one-sided game and I get 100 points, but sometimes I win an even game, like back and forth, the same amount of kills, 1 or 2 missed plays here and there from the enemy team, or 1 or 2 really big plays from my team. We managed to win, and I get under 100 points, so like 80, 80 or less. And every time I lose, no matter what the circumstance, it looks like I'm losing 120 plus points until I make it all the way. I believe right now I am around rank 25 at the time of this recording, because it's just been losing streak after losing streak, get a couple wins, get a couple ranks, and then lose again, and it seems really one-sided. So I think, and again, I'll talk about this later when I talk about ranks, but there's definitely something going on in terms of Hero League and the fact that pre-mates are so much easier, and honestly, I don't believe I am rank 1. I'm not saying all of this to pretend that the game is unfair and that I am unfairly being put in a higher ranking than I should be. In fact, I think it's the opposite. I think it's when I'm playing with my friends, and I don't think any of us are necessarily rank 1. If you're taking Blizzard's word that it's supposed to be 2% of the population, I don't think we reach that skill level. But because it's a team game, that pre-made composition makes it so that we can actually reach that level. Well, individually, we might not be that way. And honestly, I gotta tell you, from the games I'm playing right now in the 20s, I don't think I'm gonna be ranked 25 for long. This is just a particularly bad losing streak. I generally go back up to the 10s. It does not feel like I belong that way either. So I think there's definitely something going on with the matchmaking rating. Most of us speculate that has to do with that perception of averages, but we'll see. That, I think, is a big detractor for the game, because oftentimes really good players feel like they're being punished, particularly if they're solo queuing and they get matched up with players who have a way higher ranking than they do, and then they lose a lot of points. It does feel unfair. I don't know whether it is or not. Speaking of Team League, I have not played a lot of Team League. Again, I don't have 5 players of the same level of skill who play together that often. I have a lot of friends who are sort of casually playing the MOBA, and they get in and they get a couple games, but they're not really interested in rank. So I'm not going to speak a lot about that, but I have heard from a couple people that there's a huge rank difference between teams sometimes, particularly when between rank 50 and rank 30. It's kind of hard to climb the ladder because of the fact that it'll be your first game. You never even played a game together as a team as far as the game is concerned, and you'll face a rank 12 team and it'll just ruffle stomp you. And but again, I just don't take my word for it. That's what I've heard. I'm not gonna speak too much about Team League again because I feel like it's a little bit of an investment. Just from a particular point of view, I think my opinion would be we need to try to make it so that pre-mates are not as easy to rank up, or maybe to keep Hero League to 1 or 2 people. 3 and 4 seem like, especially particularly 4 players, feels way too strong, because the difference in skill might not be enough to overcome the communication abilities if you're using voice chat, or the fact that you played together. You play together with 4 people, it's a lot easier to react the way they're going to react. For example, you always have your same friend is your tank, he always engages this particular way, you're going to do it that way. And then in this environment, which is actually supposed to be about solo queuing, that gives you a really strong advantage, particularly for the objectives. So I think that that's also a thing we have to look at. Moving on to ranks, and now a little bit broader, I think there's a significant disconnect between the rank and your matchmaking rating hidden MMR. The only thing we have to go on for now is HOTS logs. Some of you guys will tell me that it's really unreliable, and I would tend to agree if you don't upload replays. It's definitely incomplete data, but I think this is the best tool we have at the moment to sort of get a little bit of idea where we're standing. And there definitely seems to be, particularly in Hero League, a disconnect with how good your matchmaking ranking is with your rank. Again, I get ranked often in my North American account, which is right now ranked 25, with people in the low single digits, so like 8, 5, that kind of ranking all the time on the enemy team. Sometimes in my team, although oftentimes I feel like I'm getting ranked with players of higher rank than I am, and that could suggest that, according to the game, I'm not supposed to be that low a rank. But there seems to be a definite disconnect, and I think Blizzard already talked about it, and supposedly in the next patch, they're going to try to fix it so your rank reflects more or less what your actual skill is. rather than how many points you've gotten. And that leads me to sort of my idea, which is I would prefer for them to head in the direction of StarCraft 2. I would rather have leaderboards and leagues, because at that point you can sort of keep the competitiveness going, but it doesn't, it actually, I don't know what I'm trying to say here. The way the current system works is it sort of rewards you for having points, for getting points, and then it doesn't really match you. Like, it's a different objective, right? Like, gaining rank points is not the same thing as playing people with your same skill level. Because this is sort of the philosophy that they've given us, is that they expect, if you have a properly balanced system, they expect you to have around a 50% win rate, right? Of course, at the very top of the ladder, you're going to have people who have a higher percentage win rate than 50% because they're very, very good. But if you're having a 50% win rate, that means you're, in theory, being matched against people who are about your same skill level. So if you're all equal in skill level, it's supposed to be 50-50 about who's going to win. Of course, with a little bit of variance. Are you better on this map than the other person? What kind of heroes? The team? There's a lot of variables that go into it, but in theory, around 50% plus or minus a certain amount of error seems to be acceptable. However, it does, because we talked about it before, if Blizzard is doing average MMRs, then that is actually not very good, because you get a rank 1 player, team them up with a bunch of rank 30 players, and they happen to lose a game against people of the same of equal MMR theoretically because of the averages. The rank 1 player is being penalized for something that's out of his control because he's being teamed with people who are not as good as he is. And at the same time, the rank 25 players, if they win that game, they're going to get rewarded really almost out of proportion because of the fact that their average is being brought up by the rank 1 player. So there's a different disconnect there. In particular, I think they should definitely head into the direction of leaderboards, because then you would just be in a league, right? You're this good, you're in diamond, you're in silver, you're in gold. That's where you belong, and then you get to the leaderboards, and of course you can improve to the point where you can jump the league forward, and then at that point you just keep many match with other people, and then that will directly reflect your skill. Basically, the leaderboard at that point would be the competitive nature of it, how high can you go on the leaderboard, but the league would be the mechanism on which you get paired with people of the same skill level. And I think those two objectives are not necessarily mutually exclusive, but I don't think you can quite achieve it the way that Blizzard's intending to with the current rank system. With that said, now as far as like an actual review, I really like this game. I really appreciate this game. I think a lot of people who are not into other MOBAs are really gonna like this game. My personal score for this game, it will be around a 9 out of 10, because I'm having so much fun with it. I really, really love it, and I have faith that they're gonna fix it. The few things that need tweaking in the future is a really young game. You definitely need to have at least one season under your belt if we can talk about having MMR rankings that make sense. I think Blizzard needs to learn a little bit from their other games like StarCraft 2 and a little bit from other games in the industry like Dota 2, which have, in my opinion, a better matchmaking system. And again, all the internal numbers aside, I feel like you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You don't need to go that crazy with the way that they're going and keep it super simple. You can keep it super simple, but, make it effective. From an actual objective point of view, though, I would probably give this game around a 7 out of 10 because of that. And the main reason why I want to just explain it a little bit, you might think it's a little harsh. One of the reasons why MOBAs are popular is because of the competitive nature of it and the idea of climbing that ladder, making sure you keep becoming better and becoming better and becoming better. And until you have that fixed, you can't really give this game such a sublime rating. You can't say that it's a perfect game, because it's one of the things that's going to give it a lot of validity, and it's going to give it a lot of importance and respect, particularly in the esports community, where, for example, if you have professional players, and I'll talk really briefly about what I think about that. You have professional players, you need to make sure that they have a consistent way to get paired against good players. The problem being right now with the professional scene that oftentimes they don't use the matchmaking for tournaments, right? You get a team, you go into the tournament, and then you do a draft, and that's what it is, and then the better team wins. And there's no sort of like magic way to keep him going better. But in the future, if you want to keep the interest of high competitive players that are not necessarily professionals, just like those diamond leagues, those guys who are right below what's going to be rank master, grandmaster, so the rank 1 through 5 guys, I feel like you definitely need to fix this, and I will not give it a better score until they fix that. Again, personal score around a 9 because I really, really love it, but objectively around a 7 out of 10 I think would be a fair score to give it. I'm really excited to see what comes up next for this game. I think it's going to be a lot of fun to see the new heroes, to see the new maps they come up with, new concepts, and of course as they refine the matchmaking systems, the ranking systems, to more accurately reflect what's actually happening. Again, remember, this game is very new. It's in its infancy. It's going to take a couple of years before they can definitely be as refined as they can get it. And particularly, one of the things that helps a lot is the brilliant design team from Blizzard. I think the heroes that they've been coming out with have been really good, and they've been playing a really careful game of making everything balanced. And particularly the idea that they don't have those summoner powers or stolen power, whatever you want to call them from other MOBAs, where like you as a player have 2 powers or 1 power that you can put another hero, and that, I think like that makes balance really difficult, because a slow hero, then you can put sprint on him and it sort of gets a little wonky. I really like the idea of what they're doing here with keeping that, and then keeping those barrier entry sort of skill caps out of the way, so the player can become better at playing the game, better at decision making, better at playing objectives, better at combat, rather than having to work for a long time just to master the fundamentals of last hitting and then memorizing a build either from memory or from a website, and then just buying that repeatedly over and over and over again. It's because you just pick meaningful talents, and I think that Blizzard's going to continue going that way. I think they're going to continue making heroes with talents that matter and refining the older heroes. We've seen this a couple times already, where they go back and they fix the talents to make sure that when you're making picks at every level that you get a talent actually makes an impact on your game style. And particularly, certain heroes that they've gotten really close to, where the map itself will dictate what you pick, and that's awesome. I think that's where we want to be, and I think that for this particular game, the need for a gold store or talent memorization seems a little unnecessary, and I think turns the people that are trying to attract to this particular game off, and that's the segment of the market we're going after. With that said, I think that is my whole spiel, game analysis, and review of Heroes of the Storm. Let me know if you agree or you disagree with anything I said. What are your thoughts on the game? Remember to comment down below. Give me a like if you appreciate my opinion, and a dislike if you think I'm completely speaking out of my face without any sort of proper cause. My name is Al. Thank you so much for your time, for listening to me, and I will see you all next time.